Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Tinnitist TV. Today, I am talking to the living legend known as Dion. You might say Dion is a guy who needs no introduction, and you would be right. But since I'm sitting here and you're sitting there, I'll give him one anyway. Simply put, Dion is essentially a founding father of rock and roll. With his group, the Belmonts, and then later on his own, he wrote and sang a whole list of immortal classics: A Teenager in Love, Runaround Sue, The Wanderer, Ruby Baby, Abraham Martin and John, the list goes on. Back in the day, he was on the Winter Dance Party tour with Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper. But he didn't get on their ill-fated flight because he couldn't bring himself to spend the $36 on airfare. Since those days, Dion has had plenty of career and personal triumphs and tragedies, from the rock bottom of long-term drug addiction to the high of being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by Lou Reed. Throughout it all, though, he's never stopped performing, writing, and recording. More importantly, he never stopped making great music either, and that includes his new album, Stomping Ground. It's the sequel to last year's Blues with Friends, and like that album, it features a VIP cast that includes Bruce Springsteen and Patti Scialfa, Eric Clapton, Billy Gibbons, Peter Frampton, Mark Knopfler, Joe Bonamassa, and plenty more. A few weeks back, Dion zoomed in from his home in Florida to talk to me about Stomping Ground, the upcoming biographical musical The Wanderer, and a whole lot more. Here's how it went. Well, listen, first of all, thanks for doing this. And thanks so much for this new album, Stomping Ground. Great work, as always. I am constantly, I guess I shouldn't say surprised, because it's not a surprise, because every time you put out an album, I write something or I read a review that talks about the fact that, you are still making great music after all these years and haven't let up. What keeps you going? What inspires you? What drives you to keep working as hard as you do?
I don't know. I I think I could say I don't know how to put this, but my father uh, was he was like an emotional 13-year-old. He never grew up. He never had a real job, and that brought some problems. But one of the things that it inspired or encouraged in me was a sense of wonder and awe and mystery, because he would walk down the streets and he would always see animals in the clouds and pick up leaves on the street and look at the back of them. He was always full of wonder. No matter what he saw, he was always paying attention. And it filled me with this sense of wonder. And I wake up with it in the morning. I have like I love my time here. I love life, people. Just I just like expressing myself. I think everybody they asked me to write something for this album, and I thought, wow, how lame could you get? Like Thelonious Monk said, talking about music is like dancing about architecture. He said, how do you talk about music? It's right there in the grooves. I don't have anything to say. And then I thought a little bit about it, and I said, yeah, maybe I do have something to say. I think we're all born with a creative gene in us, some kind of a sense of creativity, because you watch the sunrise come up every day. It's different every day. The formations, it's different. God's full of creativity. He full of wonder and awe and mystery and beauty, and So I think I've kind of got this gene, and the beautiful thing about doing an album like this is the community sense of it, the of giving and giving and receiving. Uh, what a wonderful thing to be part of a musical community that I've never felt more a part of than right now. It's crazy because with these albums, I've been writing the best songs I've ever written in my life. I think maybe I have more experience and more to say. And I feel like I'm under the spout where the glory comes out, you know, where just under that wellspring of creativity, and it's just downloading in my head. It's like, yeah, the one thing I could say about it, Daryl, is that I couldn't plan it if I tried. I think what the pandemic has done for me is it's given me time, you know, like if you wanted to write a book, what a great time to do it. If we couldn't go out, so you have more time, you know.
Yeah.
So I've been doing writing, you know, and but to give you a real, you know, definitive answer on that, man, I couldn't plan it if I tried. I'm like, it almost surprises me that at my age, that I just, it's like, where you going? You know, it's like, I feel like I caught a wave, like I'm skating. You know, when you catch that wave or the flow, however you say it, you know, I feel like had no anxiety about any of this stuff, no angst or, you know, stress about it. It just was such a joy doing this with great friends, good friends, talented, unbelievable artistic friends. And we're making friends by making this music. So it's like, that's the stuff I wrote about. I said, man, what an incredible thing to do at this time, in spite of all the, you know, the horror that's going on. A lot of people are going through just really just painful stuff, you know.
Yeah, well, but as you said, it's you know, you've had the time and you've made good use of the time. Obviously, were you always intending to do more than one album? Because this one basically sort of picks up where Blues with Friends left off. Was it always the plan to do a series, or did the first one just work out better than you expected and you decided to carry on?
You know, the first one was a big surprise to me because I never intended to do Blues with Friends. I just intended to record these 14 songs that I had written. And, you know, for an artist, if you don't get them out physically, if you don't get the songs out, it's like being creatively constipated or something. It's like you back up. You need to get it out. Otherwise, you get frustrated and start yelling at people. So I went down the street, I recorded this stuff, and my friend Joe Bonamassa comes over to the house, and when he heard Blues coming on, the first song, I played him. I said, what do you think of it? He said, I want to play on that. And that started the catalyst, because I thought, wow, I mean, he's playing stuff on here that I could never imagine, dream of, make up. It's just over my head. He made me realize how limited I am, the way I hear any kind of creativity to contribute to the song I wrote and the track that I put together. That I know how to do. But what do you know, the window trimmings on it, Joe made me realize how limited I am. So then I started asking, you know, Jeff Beck to play on something, or Van Morrison to sing with me. I thought this is a great idea. You know, it's making the songs more interesting to me, and it's so much fun to do it like this. You know, and I get excited. I hear like you know, a guitar player like Joe Louis Walker play on something I did, or you know, have Billy Gibbons play on something. It's like, wow, you know, it's crazy fun, you know. So then when when that went over so good, my record company said, "Hey, you got time now? Why don't you got any songs that you didn't do or that you
Yeah.
write? How about doing another album?" I thought, hmm. I sat down, I pulled out some of the songs I had hanging around that I maybe didn't do or dusted them off, and I started writing new ones, and and I was just going to make an album again. I didn't plan it, and then I thought, no, I'm going to give this to Joe. I'm going to see what he does. So I gave the first song to Joe Bonamassa, "Take It Back," and it started again. Daryl, it just started again.
So logistically, how do you figure out who does what? I mean, are you going through all the songs and going and putting together lists of maybe this person, maybe that person, or are you sending out tapes far and wide and seeing who responds to what? It seems like a military campaign almost,
No, it's a very how could I say it? Um, it's just very off the cuff, and I think I have a gift because when I don't think of who's going to play on what. I just record the song I wrote. I try to get behind a character, write a great song like "Hey Diddle Diddle" on the album, say, right? I'm driving home listening to it in the truck, and I think, I'm going to give this to who could I send this to? I could send this to, or a good example would be "Dancing Girl." I got this song "Dancing Girl," so I'm listening to it. I'm thinking the only person I could hear on it is Mark Knopfler. It would be wonderful to hear him on this. He belongs on this song. So
Right.
I write him an email. I said, "Mark, I have a song here. I think, send it." Or I'm thinking, I got this rock blues thing. Man, Eric Clapton could kill this. That's the way I'm thinking when I'm listening to it.
Must be
Uh,
nice though that you know that you can send these people email and most of them are going to say yes. Was there anybody, and you don't have to name names to me, but was there anybody who went, thanks, but no thanks?
Nobody said thanks, but no thanks. There were some people who were busy, crazy busy, and
Sure.
I had some really close friends who were really busy. Like Bonnie Raitt was doing her own album. Said Dion could, and she's so giving to me, And she said, and she wrote me such a long email apologizing. Busy. And some people I tried to get to. I tried to get to Buddy Guy. I just never got a response. Sometimes there's walls and walls and walls of people you got to get.
Sure.
But some of the artists, some of my friends here are like very accessible. It's like Eric Clapton's very easy to talk to and very easy to work with, and Peter Frampton is just over the top. Just one of the most wonderful people on the planet. And Sonny Landreth is just, he'll help you with anything. Dion, he says, I know a lot of guys. Who do you want any emails? So he gives me a lot of, he'll give me an email for so and so, Marsha Ball. I know Marsha. Why don't you use her? Or I know Steve Kahn. You use him on the piano. Or Sonny's really great like that. But that's, most of the guys are like that. Some of them, you got to go through management because it's, I had a little different, I wanted to get Harry Connick Jr. to play piano on a thing, but it was so hard. He's so, the management, it's sometimes it's difficult, you say something and they don't quite grab on to what you're doing. Do you want Harry to do this song? No, I'm you did it. Why did you do it? I don't know. They just, they don't, and you're not talking to the artist.
Right, right. But there's always, maybe volume 3, you can get all of these people for that one.
But sometimes there's, I'm giving you the downside, but like there was the 3 artists I mentioned, that was it,
Yeah.
Mayo was busy, but the rest of all the guys I have on, they just said, yeah.
Yeah. So when you listen to it now, or after, you kind of get these people in and you're working with them and you hear the results, does that start impacting the way you're writing songs now? Does having that collaborative influence come in sort of change, something when you're working on your own music now that makes you think, oh, maybe I should do this or do that from an idea you got from working with these other people?
No, I haven't thought like that at all.
Hmm.
I'm kind of a writer. When I start a song, I kind of grab a melody or a hook or whatever, like something that I like, and some words start just coming,
Do you
And
write every day?
no,
Hmm.
no, like I'm doing interviews.
Sure, but I mean, what's writing like for you? Are you somebody who has to wait to get struck by lightning, or are you somebody who sort of gets up and has a regular set routine for doing it, or what?
No, I'm just so haphazard at it, I'm not structured at all, disciplined like that. I don't, I get up at 6:30, I get my coffee and I sit at the computer and write. I have to bang it. No,
Mhm.
it might be like after the last show I watch on TV, I walk in a room and I see the guitar and I want to play a few lines before I go to bed. And there I am for like 2 hours or an hour, just get something down. And then when you have these iPhones, you just put on memo and you just knock it out. And these songs, it's so easy with this. You just turn on memo and
Yeah.
play for a while, and there's something in there, and then you get a song, like you could hear that kind of sometimes it's nonsensical, like "Hey Diddle Diddle." That song just, it just playing with a rhythm and sounds and fun words, nonsensical things, and you'll just write something like that. But most of the time, I like to get behind a character
Mm.
and just like say what I think what would be coming out of his mouth in this situation.
Mm. Why did that work for you as opposed to, using your own voice?
Sometimes it's like it is my own voice.
Okay, all right. Well, obviously everything is your own voice ultimately, but how does it? Why does that? I don't know. Maybe you don't even know the answer to this, but why is it easier for you to write as a character than just as Dion, say?
Well, the characters in a situation, it's a funny business I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
People think that you're always writing like biographical stuff.
Right.
Like Bruce Springsteen, he wrote about his hometown. He
Yeah.
wrote about working in factories, about driving. And he didn't drive a car until he was
Yeah.
24. He never worked in a factory. And the funny thing about it is, he starts his Broadway show. The
Yeah.
first thing he says is, "I'm a fraud."
Yeah.
And everybody's like, "You're out of line. You're not a fraud. You're the real." And there's a sense of course, of what he's doing that's of course very valid. You don't have to. But what I'm saying is that they think they think the wanderer is me.
Mm.
like I'm always singing about myself, and sometimes you're not. It's like you're acting out a part in a movie, or and of course you draw on stuff that's inside you. We all identify with that kind of stuff. But it's fun. Like I was talking. There's different things that happen to me. Like there's a song I said, I got a tank full of blues, and I'm out at the break of dawn. I got my guitar in the back. I got a set of new strings on. I got a woman who really wants me and another who wants me gone. And I thought, why didn't anybody write that? I got a woman that really wants me and another who wants me gone. And it's the same woman, but not to somebody, but I'm thinking, why didn't anybody write that line? That's a good line.
Do you often have that sense of deja vu or of that sort of, hey, wait a minute, somebody must have done this before. I must be stealing this.
Right, right. Yeah, come on, somebody did this. Yeah.
Thing is, it was probably you.
So, and then you get into situations like, writing a song, like There Was a Time, the song that I did with Peter Frampton. It's about unrequited love, somebody who, I was talking to a kid once and he was like, yeah, I let this girl get away. She was the one. And he went on and on and on. And I thought, man, is that a song?
Mm-hmm.
Then I met another guy who wanted to leave his wife. He has two beautiful kids. And this girl on Facebook who got divorced is getting in touch with her. And this guy's ready to she was always the one. I married this one. I said, but I don't think you understand what love is. Love is an act of your will. It's a choice. It's not a feeling. You choose to love. And this is a woman you have two kids with. And I'm pleading with the guy. You're going to destroy this whole family. He went out and did it. He's miserable today. But I wrote, I can't get started again. On the way home, I just wrote, why must you come back to Memphis again? Do to me now what you did to me then. You walked out on me, and I just can't pretend. I thought, this guy's nuts. I mean, it's not going to end up well, and it didn't end up well.
Yeah.
But I get these songs from just talking to people, like whether guys. I love going out with guys and talking, and a lot of the songs come from that.
What's your relationship like with the older songs now? I mean, you're obviously a guy who just is always moving forward and always looking on to the next thing. So how do you relate now to some of those songs and hits that you did decades ago?
They're just like they're old friends, I don't know how, like The Wanderer was written about a guy, Jackie Burns. He was in the Navy, and he used to walk down Crotona Avenue with a tank top, with all these tattoos. He'd get Flo on his left arm. Mm-hmm. Then he'd break up with her and he'd get it covered up with a panther, and Mary on his right arm, and then every time he'd break up with the girl, he'd get covered up with dice, or then he got Rosie on his chest, and he was worth the song, so, but it's just stuff I did, and I still like, I must say, I still like to sing this stuff for people, because every time you're with a new audience and you start the song, you could feel the energy. There's something about it that you're like evoking in people, that, so it always has a sense of newness about it. It's not like I don't get tired of singing it. I think it's a tired singer, not a tired song. Never gets tired.
Right.
Song breathe new life into it,
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you one thing. I have friends, great musicians, who will sometimes say to me, Dion, I wish I had Abraham Martin and John. I wish I had the song Runaround Sue, or The Wanderer, or Ruby Baby. I wish I had a song like that. It would mean the world to me to have had. So they make me appreciate those songs.
Well, now we've got the musical's going to finally the Wanderer musical's finally going to make it to Broadway, hopefully soon. Um, what can you tell me about that? I mean, obviously it's a ton of great music in it, but what part of your life does it cover, and does it go a lot into your personal life and other things? Kind of give me a summation of what people are in for when they see this.
Well, I'm telling you, this play is it's a good story. He wrote a great story with the Charles Messina, just walking around the city with him. He never took out a pen or a pencil or a computer. He just soaked it all in. And so I guess the best way I could say it, it's about rock and roll, like street rock and roll history, early rock and roll history, and it's about history. I would say it has a lot of action. It's like the Young Sopranos with great music, with a Rocky Balboa ending, and it's like has betrayal and overcoming betrayal and great music and a lot of laughs. So it's a trip. But ultimately, I think it's a play about redemption and overcoming and transformation. Because I was like a junkie for like 15 years. I was taking heroin. I haven't had a drug or a drink in 53 years.
Congratulations.
But from the age of like 14 to 28, I was crazy and in a loon. It was an insanity. And I was telling Charles about this, and he said, "How'd you get out of it?" I said, "The grace of God. What could I tell you? I said a prayer, and here I am."
So what's it like to see your life portrayed up there on stage like that? And are there moments that you go, geez, did you have to put that in? Or was it important for you for those moments to be in there?
There's moments like you just said.
Yeah.
That's a waste of time. You take it out. But the one thing I got to tell you, there was a moment in there that, because it's not me, I'm sitting in the audience on the first reading, and this young guy and this young girl they have dialogue and they're meeting it, because I've been married 58 years to my childhood sweetheart.
Wow.
Susan. She moved down from Vermont. So I'm watching this relationship develop on stage, the way he wrote it. I've never seen it, right? And I'm watching it. And he just gleaned what I told him over the years. I knew Charles. And I got choked up because it brought me back to when I first met Susan when she moved down from Vermont into the Bronx. Who moves to the Bronx? Nobody. You're either born in the Bronx or nobody moves to the Bronx. So here, this girl was like exotic to me, man. She smelled like the fresh country air. It was like beautiful. She was different, red hair, and oh my God. I thought, what is this? So I don't think a lot of people, I probably more than 99%, never experienced anything like that. To go back and to those feelings that when you first met this girl, you fell in love with. I don't think a lot of people get the chance to do that. So I was like, thank you. I was grateful. I was sitting there, I was choked up like a little kid, man.
Well, that's great.
I have 3 daughters. I told them about it. I said, you wouldn't believe what happened to me.
Huh. Well, that's great. And I mean, I presume that there must be mention of Buddy Holly and the Winter Dance Party and that sort of pivotal moment in your life, right? That's,
yeah.
I mean, from externally, it's just seems like something that you would be getting up every day and it can't be. Obviously your life goes on. It's not something you can dwell in, but man, just how your life could have been so different for $36, right?
You got that right. You know, I don't ask me. I don't know how that, you know, my parents fought probably every day of my life because my father never had a real job. So my mother had two jobs. So it was like one of those relationships, you know, he was like a boy running around, you know, and she was trying to get him to work. Pat, when are you going to get a job? Pat, when are you going to get Pat, you know, and she would come home with her overcoat and start cooking straight from work. She would start cooking. And the rent was $36 and they'd always argue about it. And when my mother died at 103, so I used to take her out for lunch. We'd be sitting there and she'd say, you know, I'm sorry we argued when you were growing up. We were always arguing. I said, Mom, you saved my life. When I was offered, you know, a place on a plane for it was $36. That was the primary reason I turned it down. I won a coin toss, Mom. I was going to get on this plane. When he said $36, I said, I'm not going to spend $36 for an hour and a half ride, you know, whole month's rent. No way. I'm taking the bus. So I gave my ticket to Ritchie,
Yeah.
you know, my seat. So I was like, you know, I would have never had my three daughters. Who knows how, like, you know, I don't. I know one thing, in my faith, relationships never end. So someday on the other side, we'll be making some music.
Well, you know, I wanted to ask you, so many people, you know, Buddy Holly's gone, Ritchie's gone, and so many other people throughout the years that you've worked with or known, or, you know, is there anybody that you think of more than others, or that you think, man, you know, obviously we miss them all, but is there one person who means more to you, or that artistically the loss just seems so much greater than the others?
Well, you know, Buddy Ritchie and the Big Bopper, they were like more than just you know, acts on it. We were together for like 2 weeks, and I knew Buddy. I went on a tour with him before that for a whole month, so I knew him pretty well, and I miss him. And he was a great guy. You know, the guy was statuesque. He was big life, a very formal kind of statuesque guy. You know, once he grabbed the Stratocaster and went out on stage and, you know, took the stance, then it was like, hey, hold on to your ass, man. It's, you know, all, you know, no telling what's going to happen, you know, but it was like Shazam, you know, like Superman was out there. But I got to tell you, the guy that I hung with on the streets, the guy I hung with late at night at the diners in New York, the guy I used to pop into clubs with and make music with late at night, a guy I liked hanging out with, like I don't know if I could say we were so much alike, or, I mean, he was like a bigger brother to me, but that was Bobby Darin. I loved hanging out with Bobby Darin. I miss him. There's a whole lot of guys. Sam Cooke, another one that, you know, these guys influenced my life on a lot of levels. You know, they were very, you get a guy like Sam Cooke, very bright guy. I never seen him get rattled or anything, you know, just the smartest guy in the room. Yeah, I learned a lot.
Yeah. And you know, did you ever expect that you'd be, you know, kind of the last man standing of all of these guys? What, you know, just plain dumb luck to some degree, right?
I just look up and say thank you. I mean, you know, I don't take it for granted. I don't know why, but I'm grateful. I'm just grateful,
Yeah.
you know, because I can't figure it out. You know, that's why I almost feel maybe that ties into the first question you asked me. Why do I still do this? You know, in a way, maybe deep down, I almost feel like responsible. Like I've gotten this gift. What am I can't just sit there and let it just dwindle away. Like I almost feel responsible. Like I have to hone it and then cherish it and use it and make these guys proud, like Buddy. And of course, Buddy used to tell me, Dion, I don't know how to succeed, but I know how to fail. Try to please everybody. So I think if he didn't tell me that, I would have never did The Wanderer or Runaround Sue. But, I think that plays into it, the gratitude and the feeling responsible. And I was talking to Bruce Springsteen said something to me that he said, Dion, you've never lost your creative curiosity. You've never lost it. He said you're just curious about everything. So I don't know, some people see it from the outside, but I'm thankful for it because it keeps me young, keeps me like I said, I'm grateful.